So it's been about 2 weeks, a little over. This is what our beer looks like at this point. So after 2 weeks, we need to transfer it to a secondary fermenter. I guess technically you don't have to secondary ferment, but this is all yeast and original hops and all that sitting on the bottom. And in my opinion, if you don't do that, it'll start tasting yeasty. It kind of tastes like you're drinking bread. So you will get set up and transfer that. All right, so I've sanitized another carboy, the siphon. Let me stick this down in here. So again, we don't want to stir up too much. We don't want to suck the sediment off the bottom. So I'll sit here and hold this, and we'll siphon into that carboy. So sometimes you have to get creative to manage your elevation change. I typically primary ferment in a plastic carboy just because I have 2 of them, and I have 2 glass ones. And with the bigger mouth on the plastic one, it's easier to get all this built up hops, and it's easier to reach in because the hole's bigger to scrub all that out. So I'm holding the auto siphon off the bottom to avoid sucking all this junk up. Just hold it there for a couple minutes, and we're getting close to filling that one up. And that sanitizer pushing out the top, and it's not supposed to have any ill effects on the taste of the beer. Okay, so we're transferred out of here. We'll take off all that junk, go dump it in the compost. So while we're open, this recipe calls for dry hops. So there's another ounce of Citra hops. Might as well dump them in now. And 1 ounce of Cascade hops. You just don't want to pour out as well as the other ones. Let's try that. All right. Sanitized another stopper and airlock. And we will go back and put this back to ferment for about 2 more weeks. So it's been about 2 weeks. I put our beer in the refrigerator last night to cold crash it. That'll stop the yeast from doing anything, make it inactive, I guess. And it'll help us force carbonate this, which we're going to do in just a second. So we're going to get ready to transfer to a keg. So we're going to transfer this beer out of the carboy into this keg. We call them corny kegs. They were for soda. Cornelius kegs. This is so much easier than bottling. It's just bottling is a lot more labor intensive. You have to do a lot more sanitization, etc. And the good thing about this, it'll be ready like today. Won't be optimum, but you can force carbonate it in here, which we're going to do. So this had the same beer in it before, and it's empty. Still has CO2 in it. So in a situation like this, since this was still full of CO2, I'm going to consider it sanitized. I'm going to re-sanitize the lid. I'm going to put it in some sanitizer I've mixed up over here in the gasket and let it sanitize for a moment. We'll have a little bit of sludge left in here. We'll go ahead and dump that out. I rinsed it out, poured some sanitizer in there. I'm going to swish it around and dump it out. CO2 bottle with the regulator. Connect it. And I'm going to add a little bit of CO2 to the carboy, and that should sink to the bottom. So now the airlock can come off. I've sanitized the auto siphon again. See what I do? Get it in there and we'll start the siphon. Okay, I ran a little bit out on the ground just to rinse out what sanitizer was in there. So there's a CO2 cap in here that was made from the fermentation process, which protected the beer. We still are vulnerable to contamination, making it nasty. So by adding CO2 here, I've essentially replicated a cap in here, and as this transfers, it'll push the CO2 out. We'll keep it CO2 capped. So now we just sit here and let it siphon. You get close to the ends, you have to get kind of creative with the elevation change. You don't want to stir it up too much and suck up a bunch of the stuff off the bottom. Sometimes that's inevitable. At this point, that should mostly be hops. All the yeast should have been in the primary fermenter when we switched over to the secondary here. Alright, that's all we're going to get. Again, you don't want to suck up a bunch of air and put in there either. This O-ring and the lid have been in sanitizer for about 30 minutes. Put that O-ring on. All right, now you can give it a little shot of CO2, make sure it's going to hold. It's a good time to check for leaks too. Okay, now so let all the remaining air out of there. That should be good. We can go ahead and attach our hose. Let's bleed some of the what was in the hose out, and little dregs are on the bottom. All right, now that beer's cold, so it's absorbing CO2. Set aside a little sample. Now what we can do is just let it sit here. I've cranked up the pressure a little higher than normal. It's about 10. Or if you want to enjoy it faster, you can force carbonate. So the tube for the liquid side goes all the way down to the bottom of the keg. The tube for the gas side is just on top. So now this is kind of above the beer and it's sort of absorbing it down in there. But if you put it on its side, I don't know if you can hear that. It's bubbling in there. You can keep rocking it back and forth, and that'll help absorb even faster. Into a class where they did this. Just put it on the ground and do that for about 15 minutes, and you conceivably could drink it right then. The carbonation is going to be not going to be ideal. The carbonation will kind of go away pretty quick. It won't have a lot of long-lasting bubbles, but it'll work. Or we'll do this for a few minutes and then put it in the fridge and try some later. But you can also pull a little sample initially and see how that goes. And if it tastes bad, I guess you can just stop right here. Let's see. So you can test it out. See, it's got a little bit of foam, but it's not bubbling. Delicious. After our forced carbonation, this keg has been in the fridge for about 4 days. That's a chilled glass, it doesn't have to be. And so we'll let that settle out for a minute. That's something I have a hard time getting right, is the amount of carbonation. So we'll let that settle out and we'll see what it looks like. So we're back where we started. That has a pretty good head. And I don't know if you can see the bubbles or not, but it's pretty well carbonated. Let's see what it tastes like. That's really good. Thanks for watching and subscribing. Catch you on the next one.